Welcome back to the FanSpeak Network, another episode of Sibling Showdown, the Best Ball Edition. And today, our strategy sibling showdown is going to be about the rookies landing spots. In fact, the next three are going to be rookie landing spots. We're going to have a three-part series on how we feel about these rookies and where they landed. And today, we talk about quarterbacks and tight ends. All right, that's right. Rookie landing spots, three-part series. Today we talk quarterbacks and tight ends. I'm joined by my sibling, my brother, Steve. Steve, how are you doing? And are you ready to talk about some rookies today?
Yeah, absolutely. Should be interesting. Even just focusing on quarterbacks and tight ends, there are a few guys we're definitely going to be targeting.
Yep. So that we're going to focus on that today. And then next week, we will have a running back show. We will have a receiver show, since that will have a little more meat to it here and implications, especially in best ball, because that's what we care about. So let's jump right to it, Steve. And of course, do the quarterback position, the most important position in football. Let's do that first. As Washington fans, we may not have been super thrilled with the pick of Jaden Daniels. I am terrified about his frame to hold up in the NFL and the way he runs. But I wanted Drake May, but didn't get my way. We move on. And now we need to talk about the fantasy implications of all this. So, of course, it went Caleb Williams, as expected, to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to Washington, Drake May to the Patriots at 3, and then Michael Penix, I feel so bad for this guy, went number 8 to Atlanta Falcons. Will not have a chance. He was one that I was drafting in rookie sophomores that I did think we'd see maybe later in the first year. He's an older prospect. So, I really feel bad for Michael Penix, the person. I do believe in the whole Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, Packers model, but I just don't get that. And, people have belabored the whole Falcons being morons and all that stuff enough. We don't need to talk about that. I just feel bad for Michael Penix, and I would have loved to have seen him this year. So he will not be, unfortunately, one we really discuss in the best ball space for the obvious reasons that the only way we would potentially see him this year is if Kirk Cousins got injured again. So that takes us to the fourth viable best ball quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, to the Vikings. Of course, he does have Sam Darnold ahead of him. How much does he play? We'll talk about that. And of course, Bo Nix to the Denver Broncos, I believe at pick number 12. He does not have much competition ahead of him with Stidham and I'm blanking. Zach Wilson came over to Denver that week before. So, the landing spots are kind of chalky, I guess, is into kind of what a lot of people thought outside of Penix. But it's time to talk about best ball implications. So everything from here is, who cares about our feelings as Washington fans? Who cares about, is this right for the person? Let's talk about, is this right for us to draft them at their current ADP? And let's start with, of course, Caleb Williams and the Bears. Tell me about, we know his landing spot's great, but tell me about how you're handling that in best ball.
So, yeah, we talked about this before the draft, and, when we did, things have only gotten better for Caleb Williams. Bears go out and get Keenan Allen. They use the 9th overall pick on Roma Dunze. Their O-line is strengthened. This team is raring to go, putting pieces around Williams. He is going to hit the ground running. Also get a running back in Swift. So, yeah, this team is not going to mess around. They're not doing what the Jaguars did with Trevor Lawrence. They're not doing what the Panthers did with Bryce Young and surrounding a number 1 overall pick with nothing. So they're doing the right thing by him. And, I think it is going to pay off. And I think there's a reason why he is going top 12 among quarterbacks, top 100 overall picks. I think his ADP right now is about 94, 95. And I have no problem taking him. I think he's well worth that. I think he can pay off with both his arm and his legs some. And yeah, I love him, and I think he's going to be a very good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. We were interested in him in the big board drafts. We're still interested in him as things have even improved for him in the BBM and obviously Underdog and summer, summer drafts, summer basketball drafts. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. We did a whole thing on rookie quarterbacks and kind of like tempering expectations last year, kind of in regards to Anthony Richardson, but just in general. CJ Stroud proved us wrong last year. But, CJ Stroud and years before that, the RG3, Justin Herbert, Cam Newton, those are more outlier. You don't really
Very
see it.
much.
Yeah, you don't see it a ton. You don't see it certainly as much as rookie quarterbacks tend to get drafted. I'll say it that way. And so this is the Caleb Williams is going to be my CJ Stroud this year, as far as he's the one that I think breaks that mold and is definitely viable, very viable best ball, starting quarterback and someone to take, especially at his given ranking, which you said. I just pulled it up just so I can refer to exactly. His ADP is currently 94.3, and yeah, I believe it's around the top 12 there. So I'm fine with that. Spoiler alert, he's probably one of the only rookie quarterbacks I'm really truly high on, and I agree with you. I'm very interested in getting plenty of Caleb Williams shares and Bears stacks. Anything else to add to him?
No, I mean, I think this is roughly the same area that Anthony Richardson was going, and people will say, oh, Richardson had a higher upside with his rushing, and well, in some levels that's true. Williams has a much stronger floor and has what Stroud did have, and that's the ability to just dissect defenses. And unlike Stroud, he already has the offensive weapons in place. And we hadn't seen it from Nico before. We had no idea that Tank Dell could do what Tank Dell did. And Dalton Schultz obviously coming over. But now, I mean, Stroud's weapons are almost as good as there are in the league, with Moore, Allen, a top tier rookie receiver Ndunze, and Cole Kmet. So, wheels up on Caleb Williams. So absolutely wheels up on that.
Okay, so then we go to Washington's quarterback, who again we were rooting for May to be our quarterback. It is Jaden Daniels. Again, he could prove me wrong and sustain NFL hits. Play more than I think he'll be able to play based on the way he runs and how he protects himself in his frame. But he went number 2 to Washington. The thought is that this will not be like a sit and learn situation. I think most expect, well, it hasn't been guaranteed or anything yet, that most expect he'll be starting by week 1. He'll start week 1. My problem is, how many games will he start? Because again, with that frame, I'll just go ahead and say that I think there's no way in hell he plays 17 games. I hope for the man and the person in the Washington that I'm wrong, but I'm very skeptical of that. For that reason, I'm more wary to take him. Now, granted, he is, I think, about quarterback 16. He's going right in between Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins at ADP 122 currently. Wouldn't be surprised if that gets steamed up even more as drafts progress. But yeah, I do want some shares. I'm not going to be as stubborn as I was with rookies last year. I'll have some shares because I know the spike week potential with the rushing upside is there. I think it could be much like you've pointed out in the past, I just blanked on the Chicago quarterback, a former Chicago quarterback, Justin Fields. Sorry, just blanked because I was so focused on Caleb Williams. Shifting to the very recent Chicago quarterback of Justin Fields, I could see, a situation like that where, he'll have his games, and I don't doubt that he will be a spike week quarterback. I don't know that it'll be super consistent, and I don't know how many total games we'll get from him. So we know that I love 3 quarterback builds. We love 3 quarterback builds. You better believe it'll be a 3 quarterback build if it's Caleb Williams, and you better believe those. And we also talked in our prior show about the fragility of a position group in your roster, and you better believe that I'll have 2 pocket passers when I'm taking, the Caleb Williams, the Anthony Richardsons of the world. Thoughts on Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, well, I think you meant Jaden Daniels there, not Caleb Williams. But
yeah,
yes,
sorry. Yes, thoughts on Jaden Daniels.
No, I think Jaden Daniels does when we did the pre-draft show, the expectation was May was probably going to go second, because he was considered most universally the second highest upside quarterback. And because of that, the thought was Daniels is probably getting the weaker landing spot.
Mm-hmm.
Daniels gets the better landing spot here, going to the Commanders, getting tied to Cliff Kingsbury, getting tied to ready-made receivers like McLaurin and Dotson, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler. So he does get bonuses there, and he does offer the rushing ability also. So at where he's at in the late teens, that's fine. I don't think he should move up much more. They're not going to throw at the rate they did last year. He's not going to be Kyler Murray, who obviously had a ton of success with Cliff Kingsbury when he was healthy. But the injury risk is the big thing. And like you said, with somebody like Justin Fields, who's just not going to stay healthy consistently, and also be consistent performer, he'll have these big 35-point games, but he'll have games where he gets under 10 points because he just can't complete passes. Daniels is probably a little better of a passer than Fields, but he also takes a lot of sacks and will likely do so behind a very porous Washington offensive line that was unfortunately not addressed in the draft until probably too late, getting into the third round. So I think there are concerns there, but I do agree he's probably starting right away. I mean, his competition is Marcus Mariota. I don't see Mariota being him out. So he should start, but I would be very, very ensuring that I'm getting a third strong option here.
Right. So your other two options, you want to be very strong in the drafts that you take Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I would not be relying on Daniel. I'd treat Daniels as a spike week guy, which is how you should treat. Yeah, which is how you in his overall points might be fine, but you are likely going to be baking in the injury risk. You need to likely be baking in just some woefully underperforming games, and I think that is going to be a factor with this. This situation, but he does get the much better landing spot than we thought going forward. So he's fine in this area. Just
so
with that landing spot.
ADP, he's going, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 quarterbacks behind Caleb Williams. His ADP currently is 122. So you're saying you'll have him, but definitely way more shares of Caleb Williams, if I'm hearing you correct.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, then that takes us to our third quarterback, who was the third quarterback off the board in the real NFL draft, Drake May to the New England Patriots. There were offers to come up for Drake May from Vikings, from Giants. Patriots said, no, this is our future guy. With that said, I don't know that Drake May is going to be starting day one. They have a great stopgap quarterback and a great veteran that he can learn from in Jacoby Brissett. So I believe that Brissett most likely will start day one. When does May start? Is it, after whenever we find out their bye week? Is it sometime this year? Or do they give him a full redshirted season? How does that handled? For that reason, it makes me pretty nervous, even though I loved Drake May, the prospect, and I love his potential upside. It makes me nervous to take him in drafts because what if it is a redshirt year, And then again, like you said, the landing spot is downgraded. Now, yes, they did draft 2 receivers that we liked in the draft, and we'll talk about that in our receiver show. But with that, I'm kind of fading Drake May. How are you handling it?
Yeah, the landing spot was not great for Drake May. I don't think he starts day one anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if it's less than half the year that he's sitting, and we've seen that before. Obviously, Justin Fields even sat a couple weeks. Josh Allen, a lot of these guys sat a week or two. But that depends. Are we talking 2 weeks? Are we talking 4 weeks? Are we talking 8 weeks? All that depends. But the good thing with May is he does offer the rushing upside also. We saw Josh Allen, who he gets most notably compared to, even last year when Joe Brady went to this run-first offense. Josh Allen was still putting up big fantasy scores, was still a top-tier fantasy quarterback. Why? Because he could just run the ball and would get rushing touchdowns.
He was like minus 115 for a rushing touchdown every week, basically. Yeah.
I mean, May will add that element to the Patriots. So, he could still give you some spike weeks. He could give you that. I wish his ADP was a little lower. I think I'm going to wait and see if it drops a little lower. If it drops say 40, 30, 40 spots, kind of into that 17th, 18th round, then I'll probably take some shares. Where it's going right now, I'm probably not taking shares right now.
Right, 163 is the current ADP. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're wait and see with Drake May.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Again, unfortunately, Penix is not someone we can be best ball drafting this year, unfortunately, based on his landing spot. So that takes us to JJ McCarthy to the Vikings, and JJ McCarthy is going much later, ADP of 187. Another one though that I would not be surprised if he did not start week one. If Sam Darnold started week one, would not shock me. When he comes in, TBD. So for those reasons, I know that's a very late pick and he's tied to very, very high tier weapons, but I'm not sure how I'm not sure how I'm handling that. Though, of course, if things look good, he will go up. So I guess if you do believe there's a chance he could start week one or even by let's say week 4 or 6, now would be the time to take him. What are your thoughts and how are you handling JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I don't want to completely fade him because I do think he'll start. I will probably wait a little bit. Right now, I'm not going to take him. I'm going to wait and see some camp reports, see if I can get a better indication of what this, situation is going to be. My guess is that you're probably looking at least 4 to 6 weeks. I doubt Darnold gets the full year, despite the fact that McCarthy's like the youngest of these quarterbacks and least experienced. Definitely has thrown the least number of college attempts. Definitely was the one quarterback from this first round to his team relied on the least to win games. But do keep in mind he came in as a top tier quarterback recruit, big talented arm, has some mobility, so he can do the things you want him to do. It's just going to take him some time. And like you said, he has, next to Caleb Williams, the best weapons of any of these quarterbacks, with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, who by the time he comes in should be definitely healthy. So you're talking about just top flight weapons right there. So yeah, he could come in and hit well. And we even saw that. And I meant to make this point with Drake May because he's actually very similar to Bill. But remember, and he was a second round quarterback, but remember Will Levis last year had a couple strong fantasy games at the end of the year when he took over the role. So, could be the same thing. It's tough to really draft and predict for that kind of situation right now. So again, I'd like to see his ADP slide a little bit, maybe get a better indication of what kind of waiting period we're looking at. But it's hard to totally ignore JJ McCarthy when he's tied to some of these big time weapons.
I would say with both McCarthy and May, I would definitely want to wait till after the schedule release to make sure that there's not duplication of bye weeks for your other two quarterbacks, right? Because, say you have week 7 bye weeks and then you have, May. Well, May doesn't play till week 8. Or excuse me, week 9 or something.
Yeah.
And then you're taking a 0. And we just, on our prior show, go check that out on the channel, ways we're handling BBM5, is that, that's something that I would like to avoid. I'm not trying to take zeros. I'm trying to be very cognizant of bye weeks. So I'd say there's going to be 0 May or McCarthy for me before the bye weeks. Yeah. Okay. And then let's round it out with Broncos' new quarterback, Bo Nix, does not have competition really ahead of him. Really, I think it's his job to, lose to week 1. I mean, this guy was not necessarily expected to be drafted. I think you got plus odds to be drafted in the first round, and he went 12th overall to the Broncos, but that's really not a surprise. The Broncos needed a quarterback, and it sounds like Sean Payton really likes him, and he has no competition with Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. So with that said, I think this guy could start all season. He did get his college, I almost said roommate, one of his college receiving weapons, and Troy Franklin to come along to Denver with him. So that's pretty interesting. You can get Troy Franklin, for some reason, has fallen to, I believe, the 140s. So I find it pretty interesting because Bo Nix is a guy that you could get in the last round, essentially, of drafts. So are you taking any Bo Nix? Again, is this a situation where maybe a little, if you're getting like a Sutton or a Mims or the guy, what's his former, what's that?
Troy Franklin.
Yeah. If you're getting Troy Franklin, then if you're getting any of those guys, are you considering Bo Nix, or you wait until after the bye week situation? How are you handling Bo Nix?
Yeah. So, I would would still caution that there's probably a slight chance that, say, Stidham starts a couple games. But overall, I think Nix is playing the majority, 75%, if not the whole season. And yeah, he also does come in with the situation of Cortland Sutton, who we saw was a good receiver last year. Marvin Mims, who has some of the deep ability and tools to be an exciting receiver, and of course Troy Franklin. Add in Josh Reynolds, another veteran who has been a good solid guy. So he's got better weapons than actually May. He's got better weapon situation than we saw Bryce Young last year. That's not bad. So I like what he has to work with, and Denver also has added some on the offensive line. So yeah, I could see Nix doing okay, and Nix also has some rushing mobility upside. So I don't mind Nix, especially going where he's going right now. And even if he moves up a round or two, if we do get more certainty, if they do announce like he's going to be the full-time starter, I could see him move up a round or two. And I'll absolutely take him because, I think he's going to be a decent guy. Probably not the upside that Stroud gave you last year, but enough that he can give you consistent, QB3 fantasy production.
Right. And again, you're taking him as your quarterback 3. You're taking him in like your last round, second to last round situation when you're taking him. So, okay, well then let's shift over to tight ends to cover the second part of this part 1 rookies landing spot show. And this will go quick because our pre-draft show went quick and some of those guys aren't even draftable. So we're just going to talk about what we find are the draftable ones, and some of the ones that we didn't think were draftable are draftable to some people. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to go in order here. Of course, Brock Bowers was the first tight end off the board in the first round, as everybody expected. Not the expected landing spot, though, and not a landing spot that I love. And he went to the Las Vegas Raiders, who I liked Michael Mayer going into this year. Kind of downgrades Mayer. You're already seeing that in BBM. Mayer has already plummeted. Doesn't help Bowers, as far as his ADP and his landing spot. I'll still take some Bowers, but I'm not as interested in him particularly as much as I was pre-draft. And I will say, though, that you can get Vegas Raiders stacks as a value. If you want to do Minshew and Bowers and Zamir White, or Minshew, even Devontae Adams going like third round, Devontae Adams, Bowers, Minshew, something like that. That's a pretty decent value stack. So I will make that comment, but I guess my overall interest in Bowers has gone down. And sure, I also do love late tight end builds in its kind of big picture thinking, but I try to obviously diversify my portfolio to make sure that I'm, reaching some of the early tight ends and mid-round tight ends. So thoughts on Brock Bowers, his landing spot, and how you're handling it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't the most ideal landing spot for Bowers. Could have been worse, but I think Bowers probably ends up being the number 2 receiving option on this Raiders team. It's a team that will probably be playing from behind a fair bit, especially obviously when they play Kansas City. So I think he is going to get his fair share of targets. I don't think they're taking him this high, just to have him out there as window dressing.
Wind sprints, yeah.
And people will of course point to the Kyle Pitts situation a couple of years ago. I would argue that Gardner Minshew is probably better than any quarterback that Kyle Pitts has had throwing in the ball. Matt Ryan was there the first year, but got him banged up, so didn't play a full year. But outside of that, Kyle Pitts has just had really terrible quarterback luck, and Bowers. I think Minshew is there, and the fact that he also has Devontae Adams taking care of the focal point of coverage could help him quite a bit. So, yeah, don't be surprised if Bowers is sneaky good. I mean, yes, he's going like tight end 9 right now. He should probably go behind like Jake Ferguson, David Njoku. So he should probably slide back a little bit, but I don't know if he should slide back much more beyond that. So I'm probably going to let him slide slightly. But if he goes, back, say, around, roughly a round worth of picks where he's going right now, then I'll start to be on board.
Okay. And then we're going to piss some people off because after the draft, Ben Sinnott, I think I'm pronouncing it right, was drafted in the second round to Washington. And people got very excited on the draft capital that Washington spent in the second round. And I've even heard some people compare him as this year's Sam Laporta. The problem to me is it depends what comps you hear. He, is known as a very, very good blocker and versatile weapon. So pick which, version of that you want. Is he going to be more Kyle Juszczyk, or is he going to be more George Kittle that can still emerge as a, red zone weapon? I think it's going to be more the Kyle Juszczyk. I also, Steve and I have talked about this at length, that I am concerned that in an offense, and we talked about this last year with the Bears, in an offense with a running quarterback, your pass volume goes down. So therefore, not as many receivers and weapons can eat, essentially.
Yeah.
And so Sinnott was going undrafted, essentially, in big board contests. He is now an ADP of 194. I actually think this year's Sam Laporta is the next guy we're going to talk about in Jatavian Sanders. But Steve, tell me how you're handling Ben Sinnott. I know you agree because we are, kind of consensus on this. But I know we are not consensus with how it seems like the best ball community feels right now. So tell me why.
Yeah, so you mentioned last year's situation with the Bears, and Cole Kmet actually did pay off. He was obviously a very good tight end, but that's because it was him and DJ Moore. Nobody else caught passes in the Bears offense. But that's likely not the case in Washington. You have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, you have a mix of other receivers like De'Ami Brown, Jamison Crowder, rookie Luke McCaffrey. You have another tight end, Zach Ertz, who was with
more
Kingsbury
importantly
before.
Yeah, I think that's the more important. Is Zach Ertz is essentially ahead of him.
Well, or at the very least sharing with him. Where Cole Kmet, there was no other second tight end taking work from Cole Kmet last year, and you also have Austin Eckler. Last year, Bears running backs, everyone made a big deal about Roschon Johnson getting a bunch of targets that never came to fruition. Just wasn't a thing. So yeah, it just they essentially Fields and Badgett threw to two guys, Moore and Kmet.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Kmet is much more a veteran. Why Laporta worked is he came into a situation that threw the ball to the tight end quite a bit, and he clearly became essentially a number two in the offense, right behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you also had, of course, situation with the Jameson Williams being suspended for the first 4 weeks. Just needing a big red zone presence, which
Detroit was known to target their tight ends. They did with and without Hawkinson the year prior.
Yeah, like they led the league in tight end touchdowns, or were I think number two behind the Chiefs that year.
Correct.
And so yeah, he just came into a much better situation. And Sinnott, I think he's a fine tight end. I mean, most people thought he was more of a third, fourth round guy. So him going this high is nice. They'll probably utilize him in some capacity, but it could just be more as a blocker, more as a second tight end. Him and Ertz maybe splitting the role. We've seen that before. We've seen.
I was going to say, talk about the Ertz in Arizona.
Yeah, Ertz. The Cardinals drafted Trey McBride in the second round a couple years ago under Cliff Kingsbury, and he couldn't get on the field because of Zach Ertz. So we could see a similar thing now. I mean, Ertz is a little older, but we saw Ertz last year, early in the year, have a couple of big games. So, maybe late in the year, Sinnott takes over the role, and you get a couple, solid spike weeks, kind of like how Tyler Kraft, once Luke Musgrave went down, paid off. But I mean, that's what that's what you're getting excited about. I mean, that's tough to pay off for. So, I just don't see it. And especially the other thing in the offense is with Jaden Daniels, you're talking about a rushing quarterback. Again, Washington's pass volume last year was extremely high, likely to go down with a rookie quarterback and a rushing rookie quarterback. So I would just be very shocked to see Sinnott pay off where people are now drafting him.
Well, I mean, he's essentially, you're just getting him at good value. You're getting him at the end of the draft still, but you're saying it's still hard to pay that off.
There's other starting tight ends who
so that's what I was just going to ask you. So who would you rather take, Sinnott or, well, Conklin goes about 4 picks ahead of him. Sinnott or Conklin?
I mean, Conklin in a heartbeat.
Okay, so yeah, you could just answer the name. You don't even have to give it. Just so going through. I'm just going to go through 5 or 6. Sinnott or Chigakonkwo?
Okonkwo.
Sinnott or Noah Fant?
Fant.
Sinnott or Gasecki?
Closer, but Gasecki.
Okay, and this is the big one. Sinnott or Jatavion Sanders, who I think is this year's Sam Laporta?
Yeah, I mean, this is totally up in the air, but I mean, I think Sanders has a much clearer path.
To be tight end 1 and to get more targets, correct?
Yeah, on this team.
Yeah, and then the funniest thing is Sinnott or Zach Ertz, who fell spots coming into this, and Sinnott went undrafted and jumped up to in the 190s. I'd rather take Zach Ertz. Is that crazy?
Yeah. If I'm gonna take a shot on Washington tight end, I'd rather do Zach Ertz. I'm definitely getting him in the last round of the draft.
Yep.
And I would rather take the veteran who's worked with Kingsbury before. They're probably more likely to want the veteran out there with the rookie quarterback to make his life easier. And yeah, I just see that being a more likely option.
And if they're in 12 personnel and both are out there, it's likely Sinnott's the blocking tight end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the guy that we just mentioned a couple times in Jatavion Sanders, who landed with the Carolina Panthers. I think that's a pristine landing spot, just like Laporta. Why did we love Laporta so much? Nobody ahead of him. Nobody. It was Brock Wright ahead of him. So he had a clear path to tight end 1. Same situation. Is anybody scared of Tommy Tremble? No. Clear path to tight end 1, could be like a nice little security blanket and another weapon for Bryce Young. And, obviously new head coach and Dave Canales. I think this is set up, and you're getting this probably in the last round with Jatavion Sanders. Of course, you rookie tight ends, we're talking unknowns, of course, outside of Brock Bowers. But if I'm going to take a shot on a rookie tight end, it's Jatavion Sanders. He's my Sam Laporta this year. How do you handle it?
Yeah, no, I very much agree. I was actually surprised to see Sanders slide to the 4th round. He's definitely not a complete tight end, a blocker, but he was very successful with Texas. His production was slightly down this year, due in part because he was playing through an injury. For a good part of the year, he was playing through an injury. But remember, this was a Texas team that had A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Worthington, who went very late in the draft. So they had 3 draftable receivers, including Worthy, who went in the 1st round, right. A.D. Mitchell, who went to the Colts, and who was very highly touted, and he found a way to carve out a decent sized role. So very, very talented guy. Where in a situation like Sinnott, I mean, he was almost kind of like the 1B receiving option on that K-State team. And Sanders yet found a way to find a role. He's more dynamic, I think, tight end option. And yeah, I could see him being the pass catching option to get above Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, and whoever else the Carolina Panthers have on their current roster. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not.
Nothing really in the 18th round is, though. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to take some shots. I'm not going to overload it because it's not like the draft capital that obviously like Sam Laporta had.
Right.
But I like the landing spot, and I do think Bryce Young needs weapons. Maybe it's the rookie 1st rounder, Leggett. Though I have some concerns about him. We'll talk about next week.
Sure.
But after the receivers they have, they need a safety blanket for Young, and it could well end up being Sanders here.
Okay. All right. Well, that pretty much covers it. One asterisk you mentioned is Theo Johnson, who went to the Giants. If Darren Waller retires, that would be someone you're interested. That's the only way. So that pretty much covers it for quarterbacks. For tight ends, again, Steve's going to be covering this on fanspeak.com. Written form, you'll see his rookie landing spot articles this week and next week. We will do part 2 and 3 next week with running backs and receivers. And again, look for just a ton more best ball content here on the channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and on fanspeak.com. So a lot more good stuff coming. Be sure to tune in. For Steve, I'm Meg, and we will see you next time.